I couldn't just stand idly by while Karen continued to run over my mailbox. The frustration was mounting, and it became clear that talking to her, or even sending polite notes, wasn't going to solve anything. The situation was escalating, and I had to find a way to deal with it, my way. I considered a few different approaches. I could try to set up a security camera to catch her in the act, but I knew that would be a long, drawn-out process. Plus, I didn't want to start an all-out war with my neighbor. But after thinking about it for a few more days, I realized one thing: the best way to deal with a Karen is to outsmart her. She thought she could push me around because she held power in the HOA, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. I needed to make a statement, something so noticeable that Karen would never even think about running over my mailbox again. The answer? I would build a mailbox that was impossible to miss and impossible to destroy. I started planning. This wasn't going to be just any ordinary mailbox. It had to be a mailbox Karen couldn't ignore, and it had to withstand any attempt she made to drive over it. The mailbox had to be big, bold, and intimidating. After a little bit of research and a few visits to the local hardware store, I knew exactly what I needed: a heavy-duty steel post, reinforced with concrete, and a mailbox so sturdy it could survive a car crash. But that's not all. I wanted it to send a message loud and clear. It wasn't just about building something that could handle her tantrums, it was about creating something so in your face that she would think twice before causing any more damage. So, I decided to paint the mailbox bright red, with large, bold letters that read, "Do not touch, HOA approved." It was a little over the top, but I knew Karen would get the message. I spent the next few days constructing the mailbox. I poured the concrete base, attached the steel post, and carefully mounted the oversized, nearly indestructible box. The whole thing stood tall, sturdy, and undeniable. It was a masterpiece of mailbox engineering, and a perfect revenge. Once it was complete, I stood back and admired my work. It was exactly what Karen deserved: a mailbox that was not only impossible to run over but also impossible to ignore. When the project was done, I couldn't wait to see the look on Karen's face when she drove by and saw my new creation. I had been so fed up with her arrogance, and now I was going to give her something she definitely wasn't expecting. I figured I'd get my popcorn ready for the next time she passed by. The day came. I watched from my window, waiting for the moment of truth. Sure enough, I saw Karen's car approaching from down the street, moving at the usual slow pace as she neared my mailbox. I knew she had no idea what was coming. As she got closer, I could see her eyes widen when she saw the massive, red mailbox standing there, tall and proud, in the middle of the driveway. She didn't even brake at first. She probably thought it was just a regular mailbox. But then she saw the size and the message on it. "Do not touch, HOA approved." She slammed on the brakes, stopping just a few inches away from the mailbox. I could almost hear her groan of frustration from my window. The look on her face was priceless. She was completely taken aback. She tried to inch forward a little, probably hoping to give it a nudge with her car like she had done so many times before, but this time, there was no way it was moving. It was unmovable, and Karen knew it. She sat in her car for a few seconds, staring at the mailbox as if trying to figure out how to get around it. But she didn't. Instead, she threw her car in reverse and backed up, making a U-turn down the street. I watched as she drove away, visibly frustrated. That was the last time Karen ever touched my mailbox. In the days that followed, there was no more damage. My mailbox stood firm, untouched and unbothered by any of Karen's attempts at revenge. But even more satisfying was the fact that Karen had been forced to acknowledge that she couldn't push me around anymore. The boldness of the red mailbox, with its HOA-approved warning, made it clear I wasn't someone to be trifled with. Eventually, I heard rumors that Karen had tried to convince the HOA to get involved and force me to take down the new mailbox. But after a few complaints and a lack of support from the other neighbors, who were more than happy to see her get her comeuppance, Karen backed off. The mailbox remained, and so did my peace. The moral of the story? Sometimes, you don't need to argue or confront people directly to get your point across. A little creativity, a sturdy mailbox, and a lot of patience can send a message far louder than words ever could. And when someone's trying to push you around, sometimes the best move is to build something they definitely didn't see coming. It wasn't just about constructing a mailbox. It wasn't even about stopping Karen from running over it. The real goal was to show her that there were consequences for her actions, consequences she couldn't simply dismiss. In my mind, the mailbox became more than a piece of functional property. It was a symbol of resilience. It was a reminder that I wouldn't tolerate someone with a sense of entitlement running roughshod over my life. Building that mailbox was cathartic. Every hammer strike, every piece of concrete I poured, felt like I was taking back a little bit of control. But the most satisfying part of the whole process was the red paint. It wasn't just a color, it was a statement. Every brushstroke was a loud, vibrant declaration that I wasn't some passive neighbor she could walk all over. No, this time, I was taking ownership of my space. I knew Karen wouldn't see it coming. She probably assumed she could get away with her petty behavior, like she had with all the other neighbors who were too intimidated by her HOA power to do anything. She'd been allowed to push people around for so long that I had a feeling she'd never expect anyone to stand up to her the way I was planning to. The final touch was adding the bold, undeniable message on the mailbox: "Do not touch, HOA approved." I could already imagine Karen's face when she saw it. She would have to confront her actions head-on. This wasn't just any mailbox anymore. This was a reminder that I'd gone out of my way to protect what was mine. And if she thought for 1 second she could knock it down like she'd done with the old one, she was gravely mistaken. The next day, I stood by my window, waiting for the inevitable. I knew Karen had a routine. She drove down the street at the same slow pace every morning, as if she owned it. I knew the moment she would pass my house. And I waited. I stood there, practically holding my breath, knowing that her reaction was going to be priceless. Sure enough, I saw her car coming down the street. At first, she was too focused on the road to notice my new mailbox standing there like a silent sentinel at the end of my driveway. As she got closer, I saw her car slow down. She saw it. Her eyes widened as she took in the new, larger, more imposing structure. I could almost hear her muttering under her breath. She hit the brakes with a screech, the sound unmistakable even from inside my house. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. There she was, sitting in her car, a few feet away from the towering red mailbox. She was frozen, probably trying to calculate how to deal with the situation. But there was no easy way out. She couldn't just drive around it or knock it over. I watched her eyes scan the bold letters on the side, the words HOA approved, practically mocking her. It was as if the mailbox was daring her to make a move. The tension was thick. Then, I saw the realization settle in on her face. She wasn't going to run over it. She wasn't going to push it out of the way. She was defeated. I could tell. She threw the car in reverse and backed up, fast, without a word. No angry honks, no last-minute swerves. She just turned around and left, likely fuming the entire time. It felt like a victory in that moment. But it wasn't just about winning a small battle over a mailbox. It was about making a point. I had outsmarted her. I had taken a petty situation and turned it into a personal triumph. Karen had spent too much time trying to assert her dominance and control over everything, including my property, and now she had to face the reality that there were people willing to stand up for themselves. But I didn't stop there. I was going to make sure Karen knew this wasn't some one-time prank. I kept track of her behavior, documenting every time she had run over my previous mailbox and caused damage. I took pictures, recorded dates, and made sure I had enough evidence to back me up. If she tried anything again, I was ready. This time, I wasn't backing down. The final step was filing a complaint with the HOA. I knew they couldn't afford to ignore it. If they did, it would only make matters worse for them. I included all the evidence and explained how I had gone above and beyond to ensure my mailbox was not only safe but a symbol of my rights as a property owner. It wasn't just about the mailbox anymore, it was about making sure that Karen and the HOA understood no one had the right to violate my space or my property. Over time, things began to shift. Karen stopped trying to run over my mailbox, and her attitude toward the neighborhood started to change. There was less tension between us, and the other neighbors, who had been hesitant to stand up to Karen before, started to feel empowered. They knew that when one person fought back, it made everyone stronger. It was clear to Karen that her reign of petty power was over. The lesson here was simple yet powerful. Sometimes the best way to handle a bully isn't through confrontation, it's through creativity and strategy. If you stand your ground and show them that you won't be pushed around, they will back down. And if you get a little creative along the way, you can make sure your message is heard loud and clear.